Commissioner Guerrero. Commissioner Lopez. Chair Sanchez.
Present.
Commissioner Quill. Vice Chair Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Wilbert. Commissioner Jaramillo. Commissioner Chang confirmed for tonight. She's just running late. Commissioner Liang is excused. We have quorum.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie. Continuing on to administration of oath. Is there anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item listed tonight?
Okay. Everyone looking to speak, could I please have you stand, please? Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give before this body will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do. Please be seated. Thank you.
Continuing on to public comments. Is there anyone wishing to speak on a matter that is not on the agenda tonight? I see no one wishing to speak. We will proceed forward. Onto the consent calendar. Does staff have any updates for the consent calendar?
Yes, Madam Chair and Commissioners, the consent calendar before you this evening. Item number 1 is for the minutes of our past meeting of September the 10th. I would like to note that on the minutes on page 5, which was for item number 7 for conditional use permit 1915, excuse me, I did add the conditions of approval that the commissioners wanted to add to that project as it related to the capacity of the establishment, security cameras, security guards, and adequate lighting for that facility. So I did include those to reflect into the minutes. Item number 2 was an item that was at the last Planning Commission. It was Development Permit Type P, 1903. It was for the property located at 3003 Northeast Street. The item was, there was a motion with the 4-4 vote. You recall it, the motion failed. So therefore, per the municipal code, the item is denied. So what we brought before you this evening is the resolution simply affirming the vote. We're not taking a new action on the item or anything. It's just all you're saying is that it was denied at the last meeting. What I handed out to you this evening was I made some minor modifications to the resolution to reflect the denial, and I had in the resolution, as it starts on page 3, you'll note some. I inserted a word here or there that just kind of clarified the resolution, so it can be finalized and voted on. Again, if I may, it's not a new action on the item. It's simply affirming that it was denied at the last meeting. Item number 3 is conditional use permit 1903. The item was advertised. When we did publish a notice in the paper, there was a few matters that we needed to address with the applicant as it related to some modifications that they wanted to make. We weren't able to get them prior to the staff report being completed. So therefore, on that particular item, we're asking that you open the hearing, see if there's anyone here to speak, and then we can continue it to the following meeting under all one same motion. Likewise, with item number 4 for conditional use permit 1905 for the property located at 849 North Harris Street. Similar situation. It's the same applicant. He wanted to make some changes to the antenna of his facility, proposed facility. So with that, we also advertised and sent out notices. But we're requesting that you open and close the public hearing and continue it, both of those items, to the meeting of November the 12th. With that, that concludes my recommendations for the consent calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. All right. Is there anyone wishing to speak on the consent calendar items?
Through the chair, I would like to
yes.
make a comment on item number 2. I would like to ask a discussion on that.
I don't know whether or not we can. The public hearing has been closed. At the last meeting, it was closed. There was a motion made, and it was voted on. So there was a final action. So there really cannot be further discussion on that as it relates to deliberation or consideration of the project, because it has not been properly noticed. The only thing that has been noticed for this is for affirming the last vote.
Okay.
Through the chair, can I comment on that?
Yes.
Well, I have some issues with it stating that I have a few issues on some statements in here. The proposed use is not consistent with the general plan. I believe it probably would be consistent with the general plan. I also, the proposed project is not consistent with general plan goals, policies, and following. And I understand it was a 4-4 vote, so probably those of us that voted in favor of it, I think it would be a good use for that property, and I think it puts a lot of limitations on what the developer can do on that property if we put this in action as far as going forward. Is this made to go to the city council?
There has been, if I may, there has been an appeal filed to go to the city council for this item. And so what we would forward to the city council, mayor and city council, would be this resolution as the planning commission's action on it, not necessarily as a recommendation from the planning commission, but it was the action taken by the commission, essentially that it was a 4-4 vote on it, and per the code that the motion failed on this one. I will say as commentary, if I may, there were a lot of in our presentation, in our report, we did find that there was a lot of consistencies. As you recall, we did support the project. Our recommendation was for approval of this, based on the testimony that was provided, and maybe some of the comments that were made among some of the planning commissioners that maybe this was not compatible with small businesses, and that we had a particular business that may be suffering or suffer from this new use going in. The thing that I wanted to clarify, and that we will in future applications, is that was not it's not a conditional use permit. So the action was not on a donut shop. The application before you was for a building approximately 2,000 square feet. And the way that our municipal code is written is that if you have a commercial property, or if you're doing a development that's adjacent to a residential zone or a residence, it comes before the planning commission. In this particular case, we to the north, I believe to the north, we were abutting residential. That's why it was a conditional use board. That's why it was a planning commission item. It was still a development permit, but a planning commission item. In those cases where our code says if you're not adjacent to residential, and I'm sure you see a lot of these industrial buildings that go up in the middle of an industrial area, or these commercial buildings that are in a commercial zone or what have you, and you say, well, why, how did that, when was that approved, or how? Again, our code does allow, I'll use an industrial warehouse as an example. If you're in an industrial zone and you want to build a warehouse, it does not require planning commission approval. It's a staff level approval kind of a thing. So in this particular one, what we tried to clarify was that it was the proposal that was being used. We only added the reference to the donut shop. I won't say we only, but one of the reasons why we added the donut shop for reference is because most of the time when there's an application before you and there's a building, some of these, there's a service station and there's another store next to, another building next to it, we regularly hear, do we know who the proposed user is going to be? Do we know who's going in there? Do you know what the applicant wants to put in there? And so in those times that we do know who's going in or who the intended tenant is, like in this particular case, that's why we clarified who it was. We knew it was going to be Yum Yum Donuts or Winchell's Donuts. They had it on their drawings, and so it was clear to everyone. And so in the future, I think we will clarify that what's actually before you. So it is whether it's a building or was it a use. And so again, there has been an appeal filed, and what we are doing tonight is simply reaffirming what the action was, on there. It basically died because of the 4-4 vote.
Chair, if I may, just to clarify, the way the staff report is written, we say it's affirming the resolution. The best way to think about it is it's memorializing the action. So whatever you do today, to pass this resolution, not to pass this resolution, has no legal effect for what happened at the last meeting. And what happened at the last meeting is it did not pass. So if this resolution passes, then these are the findings of the Planning Commission. If you don't pass the resolution, it means there are no real official findings for why it failed, but nonetheless it failed. And it will have no legal effect for it having failed, and it will have no legal effect for it being appealed to the City Council.
Yes, but can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes, but what you're asking us to do is approve what staff has written here. It says the subject site is not physically suitable for the type of use being proposed. Now, I personally don't believe that. I think that's a freeway-orientated property, and I think it has a lot of uses. Unlike the neighborhood donut shop, this was a freeway location that could have brought a lot of tax dollars into our community.
And you have every right to vote accordingly,
Okay.
consistent with those beliefs upon making passing the resolution containing those findings. But I just, want to impart upon you that even if the resolution fails, it does not change the fact that the actual permit failed.
Thank you. So I think in summary for this, whether it passes or fails, as legal was saying, that we can maybe agree that it is being appealed. For those who are in favor of it, it will go to City Council. For those who did not, it still will be going to City Council since it has been appealed. So if we pass, the recommendation will continue. Right. Okay.
If I may, on items number 3 and 4, we'd ask if you could open that public hearing, see if there's any comments, and then close. And if I make a suggestion, just kind of reading the room, if you will, if you feel that you may be inclined to not vote in favor, I'll say, for item number 2, you may consider removing that item from the consent calendar to vote on it separately. That I would make that suggestion if you think that you may be inclined to do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Oliver.
You're welcome.
So we will open the consent on agenda item, or actually I should open public hearing for item number 2. We do have some people who want to speak on this item. If we could have Hank Luna come up. If you could state your name and address for public record.
My name is Hank Luna. I live at 3231 Broadmoor Boulevard, San Bernardino. Good evening. I just wanted to make a few comments about the prospective Yum Yum Donuts. It was suggested at the last Planning Commission meeting that the Yum Yum Donuts, among their reasons for wanting to open that business in San Bernardino, was to help our community. And I just went home that evening and I just found it I was finally skeptical about their intentions. I'm thinking, how is it that a business that's going to move into town and run a small mom and pop business out of business, how is that helping the community? I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me, the very concept that they say they're going to help our community by running an existing community out of business. Something just seems very unethical and unsettling about that, in my opinion. Because in effect, that's what they would be doing. It would be a matter of time, but the small mom and pop donut shop that represents the family's entire livelihood would, in effect, be run out of business. Also, I'm thinking if they really wanted to help our community, isn't one of the first steps of helping a community becoming part of that community, moving into the community, living here among us? I don't know where the gentleman who spoke last time, the prospective owners of the Yum Yum Donuts, live, but I'm thinking they should want to live in the community where they're going to build this business. And I'm not certain where they live, but I'm skeptical of that as well. And that was my closing thought. I just wanted you to consider the sincerity of what they said when they said they were trying to help our community. If they are not willing to be part of our community, how are they going to help it? And I just wanted to leave you with that thought. Thank you for considering these words. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Mr. Luna. If we could have Sor Nyan.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, second time I come here because I heard they appealed for the Yum Yum. Because I'm just don't want it to come to close because they're gonna take out my business, and I have my business. This is only one I have right now, and then I need to support my 3 years old son and 10 years old daughter. So I don't want to close because I moved from LA to here to build my business for my families, for living happy life, happy family. That's it. That's all I want. But they come here to close from us only like 700 feet. That's not too far. They have a donut around there, like from 1 mile and half mile. They have Yum Yum on Highland in front of Home Depot. They have Superstar donut only like 1 mile, and Mana donut around there, a lot of donut. If they try to, if they want to help the community, why you want to come to close? You go build somewhere else that is donut around you, so you can pay tax, and I pay tax, same thing. If you take my business and then you pay only yourself, So, I just want legal, like any around there that is no donut around them, That's it. Thank you.
I have a
Thank
question
you.
through the chair.
Yes.
As
Commissioner
the
Clark.
previous speaker brought up,
Yeah.
the Yum Yum Donut was going to bring stuff to our community. Are you a member of the community?
Yeah, I live in San Bernardino,
Are you a member of our Chamber of Commerce?
Chamber Commons. I don't know.
I don't believe you are.
I don't know what is.
But if you wanted to help and work and support our community,
Yeah.
that would be important. That'd be an important step in working together with the community.
Yeah, I do. I just want to move to San Bernardino.
I-
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have one other speaker, Claire Clark.
Hi. This is all kind of confusing because this is, something I'm not used to doing. But, David is supporting his family. And at the last meeting, they talked about the competition was good. But you can't, equal, like, what he has. It's just him and his family running the business, basically. And it takes up most of their life, They spend a lot of time keeping their donut shop going. And whereas Yum Yum is has many stores throughout, and that's not really a fair competition in anybody's opinion, I would imagine. So, I'm just stating the facts that it just doesn't seem fair. Plus that site, as I mentioned previously, is there's a lot of traffic there. There's a lot of accidents at that intersection. And I really don't think that's something that's going to attract people wanting to hurry to get to work or coming home from work, stopping in and being distracted, trying to drink their coffee, not spilling their hot coffee on themselves, eating donuts. I just think that's a really distracting type of a business to have at such a very busy intersection that already sees so many traffic accidents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? All right. Have you been sworn in?
Yes, I have.
Yes?
I want to speak on it, but I had a procedural question. If this gets appealed to the council, and the council allows the appeal, does it come back to planning or DRC, or does it just go on? That's all.
No, it continues on.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? If not, I will hereby close the public hearing. May I entertain a motion or a discussion on this item?
Madam
Madam
Chair,
Commissioner?
just to clarify, I don't believe we actually separated out item 2. I don't remember hearing that. And so just as a point of clarification, are you referring to, would you like to separate item 2? Or are you asking for a motion on the
Yes.
entire consent calendar?
Yes, if we could separate item 2 from the rest
So
of
we'll need a motion for that second vote.
I'd like to make a
remove.
motion to set aside item 2.
All right, if we could have a second, or is there a second? Yes? Oh,
I'll second that.
okay. If we could have, then we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay. All opposed?
Aye.
Commissioners, would you be kind enough for though, if you voted in favor of the motion, would you kindly raise your hand so we can clarify the vote? Yeah, vote.
This clarification is for just separating the,
For a separate vote, correct, on item number 2 from the consent? Okay.
Okay.
So for ayes, I have Carlos, Anthony, and Helen.
and me.
Are we voting to separate it? off of
Yes.
the- Oh,
Yes.
to take it off of the consent calendar?
Yes.
Yeah, for a
Yes.
separate vote.
Okay, I misunderstood, I'm sorry.
We'll just clarify, this is just to take item number 2 off of the consent calendar, so we can have a separate vote for that. So we have a second, we have a motion. If we could have, again, those in favor of separating item number 2 from the rest of the consent calendar?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Those against?
To separate?
Okay.
Oh, my apologies. Aye, on separate. Yeah.
All right. So we have separated the second item?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm going to first...
You can.
What we'll do is all the rest, so the minutes and the and the 2 CUPs will be together, and then item 2 development per type P 1903 will be separate.
All right. We've had some discussion on item number 2. Is there any further comments that the commissioners want to make on this item?
I don't see the purpose of separating it other than to just separate it, because as you explained, this was already voted on. It's like we can't go back and relitigate. At this point, it's going to go up to the appeal. So by separating it, and I need clarification, are we then just going to vote to accept the resolution?
That's correct. And the reason why it's important is because people wanted to debate on
Only
whether
to
they
allow
agree-
for the...
whether they agree with the findings.
Okay.
And the reason it's important is because if the resolution fails, then it will go to the council with the planning commission having made 0 findings on why they have denied.
What do you mean the resolution fails?
If-
This one that is before us?
That's right.
So we're going to take another vote
That's right.
on this resolution, and what if it fails here, when we had already
If it fails,
discussed it and made a ruling?
It means the permit failed. This resolution is only memorializing. It's almost like a time machine.
Mhm.
This resolution, it embodies the action that you took at the last meeting, even though you're
Right.
voting on it today. So whether this resolution passes or fails, it doesn't change the fact that the permit failed. What, if passed, it will do is it will say the Planning Commission made its decision based on these findings, A, B, and C. If the commission does not pass the resolution, instead, it will say the Planning Commission denied the permit, but makes no findings as to why.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questioners, commissioners? No? Okay. I will entertain a motion for this item to the consent.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar as stated and unaffirming agenda item number 2.
Second.
So just a point of clarification, if we're voting on 2, can we just do that again and just make the motion on item 2 alone?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion unaffirming agenda item number 2.
Do we have a second? I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay.
Raise your hands, please, or don't be so shy when you speak up.
For which one, oppose or for?
Let's start from the beginning. Let's start with I.
Okay. So this I will say that we agree to the documents that Oliver has presented to us, which is denying the
It is memorializing
memorializing.
the prior denial in the resolution.
Okay. So all in favor of memorializing? Yes.
I know it seems more confusing where we're now going to say, if I say I agree with this, I agree that it's not consistent with the general plan and not consistent with the general plan goals. I'm kind of at a loss at that. I mean, we're voting on those items for this particular resolution. This could, okay, let me turn my brain around. This then could be the basis for future development for this piece of property. Right?
I don't understand your question. Can you explain?
Maybe I'm turned around myself. Okay, we approve resolution. In this resolution, I'm looking at page 3, finding number 2. The proposed use is not consistent with general plan, and the other one is not consistent with general plan goals. Well, is this true?
If passed, that will be the position of the Planning Commission. However, it is on appeal to the City Council. The City Council can reverse the decision and make their own findings on whether it is or is not consistent with the general plan. Does that make sense?
I think legal wants to say, and I understand, Commissioner, that, and all of us, I think, can agree that this property is actually a very good, viable place for the building and construction of a business. It is a viable place. So I do agree that the resolution that was presented to us denying and saying that that is not a viable place is inaccurate. So I think most of us are going to try to vote saying, no, we don't approve of this denial, that it is a viable place, but it is already in appeals, so this is just agreeing to these documents here, these changes.
There is no vote to go back since we have already taken a position and we voted. That's just the way it turned out. And as our city attorney explained, the resolution gives an explanation as to whatever the facts, the findings were for this commission based on the discussion. So it's still going to go forward. I don't know if your question is, some of these things that are outlined here, is it going to set a precedent or is it going to be used? I think that is determined by each applicant. Each application, case per case, whatever the findings are, that will render whatever decision we make. So my understanding is that the reason why it was decided to remove it from the consent calendar was to allow for the discussion, for the questions that were asked by the commissioners as well as the audience, and that was done. Now before us is we need to approve the consent calendar with those items, and then we need to vote on number 2 to accept the resolution. Did I get it okay?
Yes. Yes, you got it perfectly, Commissioner. And also, Commissioner Jaramillo, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention to you that I recommend that you abstain from this vote because you did not participate in the public hearing last time. And so I recommend that you abstain on this item, not the rest of the items of the consent calendar, just item 2.
Are there any other questions, Commissioners? Clarification on agenda item number 2, which we will be voting on. No? Okay, if not, then we will actually go into voting. If I could entertain a motion affirming item number 2. I believe we did, but we've started discussion again.
No, we did a motion for unaffirming that we had voted on for agenda item number 2.
I heard the motion to approve item 2. I heard a second, and then we were in discussion. So, as I understand the motion before the commission is to approve agenda item 2, memorializing the prior denial.
So we'll cast our votes on this.
So do you need a motion for that? No, you have one already.
Yeah, we have a
Okay.
motion, we
And
have a second.
Okay, call for the vote.
Those in favor of memorializing item number 2 as it stands with a denial, Those in favor of that?
Raise your hand, please, if you want to say aye. Raise your hand, please.
Okay. Those opposed? Okay.
Commissioner Chang, how would you like to vote?
Oh.
Behind, so sorry. Apologies, I'm slightly confused. So we're voting to affirm this resolution, right?
Yes.
So the first one was, one choice was to memorialize the previous vote that we met on September, like last month.
Yes, that is
Okay.
the function of the resolution, to memorialize that prior denial.
Okay, and now with this here, and we are to vote to affirm this particular resolution.
It's the same.
It's the same.
It's exactly the same thing.
Oh, okay. So where are we voting?
Yes, so would you like to vote yay or nay?
Okay, I'm sorry. Didn't we vote last month that we voted?
So last month was only voting on the permit.
Okay.
The commission voted 4-4, therefore the permit was automatically denied. The only thing that we're doing tonight is passing a resolution memorializing what already happened
Oh,
and explaining why the commission did what it did last meeting. That is the function of this resolution tonight.
okay. Got it. Thank you.
So would you like to vote
Vote
yay or
yay.
nay? Yay?
Yes.
Okay. Stephanie, can you read it back to us? Did it pass or fail?
According to the vote, we have 2 ayes, 5 noes, and 1 abstain. The item failed.
Okay, so the item fails. Again, it will have no legal effect. What happened last time, the permit failed. The only difference is that the commission will have made no findings as to why it failed.
Perfect. Thank you, legal. All right. Going on to opening public hearing for the consent calendar, items number 3 and 4 as well. Is there anyone wishing to speak on these items? If not, I will hereby close public hearing, and I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar, items number 3 and 4.
I make a motion that we approve the consent calendar for items number 3 and 4, that it be continued to the next regular meeting.
And item 1 for the minutes, please.
And item 1 for the minutes.
What?
And to approve item 1 for the minutes, please, because the rest of the consent calendar is still together.
Second.
All right. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Then the minutes pass. And could it be shown on the record that Commissioner Jones is leaving due to a prior engagement? Perfect. Continuing on to public hearing items. The Planning Commission will first hear a report from staff, then the public hearing will be opened. The applicant will have an opportunity to speak. Next, members of the public will be allowed to speak. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak must be sworn in and also fill out a request to speak form. The forms are located on the table near the door. When your name is called, come forward and speak into the microphone. Say and spell your name and give your address for the tape record. After all have spoken, the applicant will be allowed to respond. The public hearing will then be closed and the Planning Commission will begin deliberations and make a decision. All actions except general plan amendments and amendments to the Municipal Development Code are final actions unless an appeal is filed and the fee paid within 15 days to the Community Development Department. If you challenge the resultant actions of the Planning Commission in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this agenda or in written correspondence delivered to the Community Development Department at or prior to the public hearing. All right. Item number 5, if we could have a staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Item number 5 involves conditional use permit number 1907. It's for the property located at 1293 West 5th Street. It's currently the Pepe's nightclub. If you recall, the Planning Commission approved that expansion to a total of 94,000 square feet back in December of 2018. It also included a conditional use permit for the sale of alcohol there. The license that was approved back then was for general on sale for a typical restaurant that sells alcohol. The request here is to modify only the conditional use permit so that it is type 48, which prohibits minors from being inside the establishment. And so that's essentially the request. The analysis is that that particular request is consistent with the general plan and the development code requirements. It's in conformance with the city's regulations for alcohol-related uses. It's within the allowable concentration of ABC licenses, which I'll show you later on. And there's been no opposition from the police department on this item. And again, the benefit to this application is that it will keep minors out of the facility. Now they can go in as long as they're with an adult, and as long as they promise not to drink alcohol, they can be inside there. This is the zoning map of the property. It's within the Paseo Las Placitas specific plan area, which allows such a use. This is an aerial of the site, showing a couple of photographs of the building and surrounding area. We'll get to the color later. This is looking east on 5th Street. We're looking towards the west. This is looking north on North Mount Vernon, and this is looking south. This is the site plan of the property. One of the items that had come up at one of the prior meetings, if you recall, there was an amendment to conditions that was proposed a couple of meetings ago, where they wanted to modify one of the conditions. One of the comments came up as it related to landscaping on along 5th Street. So we have identified an area as highlighted in the site plan there on the upper right-hand corner for a future landscape planner to be installed there.
If I may, Oliver, I think also there was a discussion about the yellow paint.
Yes.
You know, that it wasn't consistent with the neighborhood.
I did mention.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. We'll get to that one.
Okay.
This is looking at the site from 5th Street, and so the area there where you see the low wall and the railing, they recently had installed a higher wall, 6-foot wall. It has like a screening. The owner has indicated that has helped keep people out, so the landscaping will be behind that. We're looking to work with him on the type of trees to put in there. Again, we do want to kind of create something that's compatible with that area, a little bit more pleasing, and hopefully compatible with the color that we ultimately choose for the site. What I wanted to show you as well, when the conditional use permit was approved last year, we also included there's an agreement that they have with the property owner over there on the area that's highlighted to the upper left, where they can use that for additional parking for their facility for overflow parking. Just wanted to show that, based on that we're going to be losing about 4 or 5 stalls to insert the landscape planner area. So I just wanted to show that there was still going to be adequate parking for that. This exhibit shows the existing licenses that are within the census tract. Again, there are 6 allowed, and there's a total of 6 in that census tract. So again, the police department has they're not in a position where they necessarily support or deny a project unless there's issues that are involved. So this one there's no recommendation there. They leave that to the Planning Commission for the particular land use decision. As we discussed, the applicant had submitted some samples, if you will, which he wanted to present to the commission, kind of for consideration. I think they're of the similar tone. No expressions, please. I have spoken with the applicant. I won't say that I made the same expression, but maybe a similar comment. My suggestion would be if the commission is inclined, maybe appointing a committee of 2 of you, maybe to sit down with staff and the applicant and kind of go through a palette of possible options that they believe would be in keeping with the rest of the commission, so it does not have to come back if you feel that that's something comfortable in doing.
Cannot staff make some recommendations if they're familiar with the area? We have several businesses there that have Spanish tile and Spanish mission type of structures and so forth. And isn't that something that the staff might be able, at least to make them aware that this is what we have in the area? And
My suggestion, of course, yeah, my suggestion was to tone it down. It's not so much the hue of the colors. I kind of like chartreuse myself, but I don't know if that's a little too bright. But I think if it's lightened, maybe any of those, maybe 2 or 3 of those colors samples that we have, if they were at least lightened, where they weren't so, I don't know if loud is an artistic term, but I'll use that for sake of a other definition. But yeah, my suggestion was to tone it down. Maybe keep the colors and even maybe what's out there, but maybe a little more soft.
Is the applicant here?
Yes,
Is the owner here? If they may, please come forward.
Fernando?
As he's coming up, I'll actually open up public hearing for this item. So anyone wishing to speak on this item can come up. If you could state your name and address for the tape record.
Yes. Fernando Olmos, address 1293 West 5th Street.
You don't look too happy because we don't like the painting.
I like the painting.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's unique, right?
Yeah, I like
I
the
want to distinguish
chartreuse.
myself. Yeah.
And it contrasts
Awesome.
nicely with
Yeah.
the golden lock.
Awesome. Thank
But
you.
I can recommend other colors if you like.
Sure. I'm open to that also.
Yes.
I think we're also, at least for me, I'm looking for continuity in that neighborhood or in any neighborhood where someone wants to put up a business or paint a building and so forth. If you've been there a little while, you're familiar with that area. You're familiar with the Mount Vernon and 5th Street. You have Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, the coloring, the style that they have, Meatla's Cafe, other restaurants across the street and down your street. Is there, and I don't think anyone there has a painting that you have. And then catty corner from where you're located, you have the new gasoline station that is doing very well, and it's the same thing. It's not within the same scheme. Is there something that you would consider those things?
The color palette?
Well, going back, the continuity of
It's
the
basically-
neighborhood.
It's brown.
Yes.
Brown.
And
or
it's
shade of
Hispanic,
brown,
it's got a
yeah.
mission, it's got, and I'm not saying you have to have the exact same thing, but I don't think, although there was a color that I might like it in something else, but not to express the continuity or what that neighborhood is. Is that something that you would consider looking at
Yes.
those other businesses and so forth and maybe
I've
coming
seen
back?
them. I've seen them. I'm willing to work with Mr. Mojica, as he stated. I'm open. Absolutely.
I agree
Okay.
with Oliver that maybe even having 2 of us commissioners sit down with you and actually kind of go over some color palettes that's a little more,
Yes.
friendly at that. These colors, although, as Amelia stated, are very nice, maybe not for a building in that neighborhood. It's just a little loud. So
I'd be happy to work with the owner to come up with a suitable color palette that will be to your liking and also to the public's liking with our work.
Absolutely.
I'll be happy to volunteer my time to put together
Through-
a palette. I have a lot of this, a ton,
Awesome.
hundreds and thousands of this.
I know that our commissioner is also from the area that
Yes,
that is-
thank you. Through the chair, please. I have driven, I drive by your property roughly 6 to 10 times a day.
Okay.
Yes. And so I'm very familiar with it. I've seen the improvements that you've made along the last few weeks with the new fencing.
Yes.
My concern is, and if you could clarify for me, the Paseo Las Placitas plan, is that still in effect today, being that it was approved by RDAs years ago? The reason why I ask is because I thought back then we did have a specific plan with the proper colors, well, requested colors of businesses and designs. And I believe even as far as the recent development of the ARCO station, had to adhere to that.
We look at it for guidance, if you will, kind of as guidelines, really more. I mean, the document was approved in the 80s sometime. I'd like to think that we've progressed a little bit since then. And so we really use it more to adhere to the land uses, if you will. You know, the design palette, there's very little new construction that occurs there. And I think that specific plan was intended for new development, for consolidation of existing buildings. There's a lot of old buildings and structures, you know, up along Mount Vernon, not so much Fifth, but along Mount Vernon for sure. And so the goal was to, if we are going to redevelop those properties in that area, that there'd be some continuity, if you will. And so none of that development really has occurred. And so so kind of by default, we just kind of been using it as a guideline more than an absolute, if you will, only because of its outdatedness.
Well, as far as the continuity of existing businesses coming in, and for instance, this one, I wasn't around when it was approved to expand to the 9,000 square feet to take over the billiards hall. So, but now we have an opportunity to go in and create a nice nightclub, you know, shall you know, continue it as a nightclub, no longer a restaurant. We have an opportunity to have that corner, which is a great entry to the Mount Vernon corridor, and have it look great, have it look nice for years to come, instead of something that, even though it's not new development, it's going to be, you know, rehabbed almost.
If I may, it's almost similar to the previous item that we debated, and I think it's upon me. Again, the item before you is the conditional use permit for the alcohol. So that's what we're considering.
Correct.
So the project's been approved. I think in the spirit of continuing to work with the applicant and he with staff, I did mention, kind of, you know, and he heard, you know, at the last meeting when we talked about, well, what are we going to do about the colors? Really hasn't been painted yet. I believe that the comment was even, there wasn't a condition or direction given regarding the color when it was originally approved, but I know that there was a color, there was a question about, you know, are we doing anything with the color? And that was kind of it. And so I think that we could work with the applicant. I think he appears to be open to working with us in terms of the palette of what he uses for the building. Maybe some of the on-site improvements as it relates to the landscaping and thing, but we just have to be careful of how much we push, if you will, and make sure that it really correlates to what the application before you involves, which is the alcohol. Again, I think that keeping youngsters away from drinking is a good thing. That's where our support came. It essentially is going to look and operate essentially the same as it has been. I think that this is a step in the right direction to minimize other issues. But I think with the assistance of Commissioner Chang and maybe somebody else, we could address. I would consider the aesthetics component. I think we are early on in the process. The applicant still has his construction drawings in the plan check process. So I think that we could, maybe there's a little bit of mutual cooperation, I'll call it, to kind of come to an outcome. And you're right, and I believe the applicant would agree that it is a prime corner, not just in that area, but for the community, as well. And so, I mean, that's kind of my 2 cents. But
Well, I would volunteer my services and time to work with the applicant, Commissioner Chang, and staff.
I just want to add, I think our commissioner's comments were excellent. This isn't to keep you from operating, but to even be accepted even more by the community at large there. When it's something that stands out kind of like a sore thumb, then we're going to hear criticism about it. But the other thing to also note is that corner is really critical because it also includes the expansion of the bridge. And it's going to be beautiful from what I hear. And there's a lot of things that have to be worked out because of the residences that will have to be uprooted, other businesses that will probably move in because it's an important corner. So you want it looking the best. And I think with the offer of the assistance, you're going to get it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez.
So I'd like to add, for the condition of approval of that, to have a commission or a little group meet up with the owner to discuss the colors, since that is an issue that is being raised by the entire commission. As being an issue. I'd like to include myself, if willing, Commissioner Chang and Guerrero as well, since she is in that area and she has to pass that, that site quite a few times a day. We want to make sure that someone who is constantly in the area is also, on board.
Okay.
Okay.
I would ask if we can just get an affirmative yes for the record that the applicant agrees with your additional conditions as stated.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, so we have an approval. Perfect. Otherwise, I think on the issue of changing from your licensing from the 47 to the 48, I think for the most part we're in agreement. If there's anyone else wanting to speak on this item? Oh.
Through the chair. I do have questions about that. So right now, are you a restaurant facility?
Yes.
Okay, so, but your hours are
6 p.m. to 2 a.m.
6 p.m. to 2 a.m.?
Yes.
For full restaurant services?
Correct.
Okay, and then you also have an agreement with the, I don't remember the name of that little center where the Mariscos and...
Yes.
Okay, so, but I see a lot of, because again, I drive this street area quite often, but I see a lot of your customers parking directly across the street where where Boost Mobile is, the library, Juan Pollo. So do you have security out there directing them to the Marisco, or that, forgive me because I can't remember what that plaza is.
As of today, no.
Okay.
The expansion has not occurred. I have not obtained the permits for the expansion as of yet, but we do have security across the street, and they're definitely visible. They have yellow vests that state security in the front and back, so the cars are being watched, pedestrians are being escorted, it's being told to walk to the light, the crosswalks, no jaywalking, and they're being escorted back and forth also.
So escorted to the parking lot directly across?
To the crosswalk, to the light, to cross with the light when it turns green, no jaywalking, and so no one can get struck on 5th Street, which is Highway 66, correct?
Correct, but are they going to the parking lot directly across where the library is, or are they going to the place where you have an agreement?
They're not going there yet, no.
Okay.
No.
If I may, Commissioners, on the original approval of the project, there is a condition, number 37, 38, which talks about security guards, which requires two guards on the outside watching the perimeter, and also requires a security guard for every 50 patrons that are inside the facility. So that's something that we will monitor. And there's also the standard condition that we've been adding regarding the 6-month review, kind of to make sure that they're adhering to their conditions of approval and such. And those were part of the previous approval, and those will be implemented with the certificate of occupancy once the expansion is completed.
Any other comments by the commissioners? I see that we have another person who wants to speak.
Okay.
Yes? All right, thank you. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Christina Marquez. My address is 1494 West 9th Street, San Bernardino, and I have not been sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give before this body will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Well, let's go back to this paint idea and the subdued colors. Obviously, I don't do subdued colors. I enjoy the bright colors. It attracts my attention. It's something that my culture is attracted to, is the very bright colors. And it may come from our Aztec ancestors who wore very bright headdresses and bright feathers when they danced. This restaurant's on the corner of Route 66. It is the corridor. It's the one that there are many groups in the area that are hoping to revitalize. I believe the restaurant was previously known way back when as the Cocky Cactus and actually had that bright green on it in the shape of a cactus. But one of the things that we are talking about with the different groups with Route 66 is putting murals that depict either the Route 66 or something from our own culture, since it is the Hispanic corridor. So perhaps they would consider putting some kind of mural on the side of the building that corresponds with either, like I said, Route 66 or with something from our heritage, such as the Aztecs. Just a suggestion. And like I said, I like the bright colors. Thank you.
Thank you. If we have no further comments on this item, I will close public hearing and entertain a motion for this item.
My second motion.
Oh, yeah, there has to be a motion first. Oh.
Second.
Second, okay. And this will be approving item number 5 with the added condition of approval. Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Continuing on to item number 6, if we could have the staff report, please.
Yes. Item number 6 is conditional use permit 19-08. This is a proposal to establish preschool services for the county, the San Bernardino County Head Start program at the Whitney Young Family Health Campus. They're proposing 2 modular classrooms, a new playground, and an expansion of an existing parking lot. This is located at 1755 West Maple Street in the residential urban RU zone. So it's just a little bit south of Arroyo Valley High School, which is just north of 9th Street. The 2 classrooms are approximately 2,880 square feet in size total between the 2 of those. They're anticipating about 22 employees. Hours of operation are proposed for 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. with 1 morning class and 1 afternoon class, and approximately 30 anticipated students. Here's the site plan. So you can see you'll have an expansion to an existing parking lot, a modular classroom, another modular classroom, and then the playground sandwiched in between the 2 classrooms. The modular units are basically the pre-approved, the style that's pre-approved by the state architect. but they are proposing to put a little bit of a paint scheme on the backs of the backsides of the modulars, just to kind of liven it up a little bit. As you can see, this is the existing Whitney Young Family Health Campus, and this is located in a neighborhood that's surrounded by county housing. And the proposal is to basically service this neighborhood, which is currently underserved for preschool services. So there's the Whitney Young Health Campus. The classrooms and playground will be on the far side of the property. This parking lot will be expanded, and then you have surrounded by county housing and some additional single-family housing in the neighborhood, so very close by for people who need to walk. That concludes my presentation. So our recommendation is for the Planning Commission to adopt Resolution 2019-067 and find the approval of conditional use permit 19-08 to be categorically exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15303 for new construction or conversion of small structures of the CEQA guidelines, and approve conditional use permit 19-08 based on the findings of fact and the conditions of approval.
Perfect. Thank you. At this time, I'll open public hearing for item number 6. I do have a speaker. Rhonda, if you could. If you could state your full name and address for the record.
My name is Rhonda Sims Redmond. My address is 647 South Aspen Street in Bloomington. I own a residence at 1718 Vine Street, and my backyard fence shares the field of Whitney Young, and I'm all for more education in our neighborhood. I just wanted to see how far back it was going to go, because my back fence is almost to the edge. Yeah, that's what I came for, because when we got our flyer, it wasn't clear. So that was fine.
Sorry. So basically, your back fence would probably be somewhere here. Currently, the current Whitney Young, current Whitney Young health facility is right here. And then the parking lot, there's one, I think, kind of utility structure in the back.
Right.
And then the one classroom would be probably about 10 feet off of the property line, another classroom, and then a small play area in the middle. They are only proposing 30 students maximum, and the hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay. And when will you get started?
It's unsure at this point. So the county right now is going through the grant proposal process for this to get funds, and they needed to get the entitlement first. So it'll be dependent on when they can get the grants for it.
Okay. Yeah. I just want a clarification. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question for you. What type of fence do you have? You said your fence would border one of the classrooms. Do you have a block wall fence, a chain link fence?
I have a chain link fence.
Okay. And your concern would be that it's just too close because...
No, I'm not concerned. I just couldn't read the map on how close it was going to be, and that's fine. I just wanted to tell my tenants if there was going to be noise or anything like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions on or concerns on this item? I do have a question. The building, the modular buildings, are they the already built ones, or are they constructing them?
They're already built, pre-approved modulars. Yeah, pre-approved by the state architect.
Okay. Sorry. Is there any chance that those could be made into permanent buildings? There's always
as I understand, this particular project is really trying to stay within the bounds of the certain amount of grant funding that they're trying to get, and so I don't think that there's additional monies to actually construct ground up. And they do want to be able to potentially move them if they need to in the future.
Is this a new service for Whitney Young? Do they have a preschool already? Are they expanding, or is it new?
This would be new preschool services for this area. Whitney Young is just currently a health campus on the county property there.
Perfect, thank you. I don't see anyone else wishing to speak on this item. I'll close public hearing, and I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2019-067, approving conditional use permit 19-08, based on the finding of facts subject to recommendation and conditions of approval, and finding that the project is categorically exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. And I want to actually give a special thanks to the county for having them come to us and everything for getting approval on this, and it is actually a great project, I think. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7, if we could have the staff report for that.
Yes, Commissioners. Item number 7 is for General Plan Amendment 19-02, Development Code Amendment, Zoning Map Amendment 1907, and Conditional Use Permit 1913. This project is located on the corner of Kendall and Mountain Drive. This shows a rendering of the proposed project. The proposal before you, the General Plan Amendment, is to change the designation from single-family residential to commercial, and the zoning classification from suburban residential to commercial general for a small portion of the property. The property is comprised of 4 parcels. One of the parcels contains approximately 5,000 square feet, which I'll show you a little bit later, that is kind of landlocked and irregular shaped, and so that is the subject of the zone change and the General Plan Amendment. With that, the proposal is to construct a convenience store, service station, and a drive-through express car wash. And again, it's on the northwest corner of West Kendall Drive and North Mountain Drive, not Avenue. This is the project location. Again, the gray diagonal stripe is a county flood control channel, and then you'll see the parallel, which is Kendall Drive. And then we have a apartment complex that's to the west of that. This is an aerial of the site. Shows the flood control channel, shows the property, and then shows Kendall Drive. This is, as it relates to the General Plan Amendment and zone change, the bold rectangle, it outlines the entire site. You'll see the small, thin property, which is currently zoned residential suburban. That is the subject of the zone change. So with this project, the 4 parcels will be consolidated into one zone, which would be the general commercial, consistent with the rest of those properties on Kendall Drive. This is the kind of shows you an aerial of that parcel, and again, there's no access to it. It's a remnant piece. And kind of reviewing our records and things, the city goes through every 20 years or so, goes through its general plan maps and zoning maps and tries to see what needs to be modified, what has changed over time. This appears to be one of those properties that maybe was overlooked, that should have been changed because of the adjacent properties, and we had the flood control channel on one side. So that's really where our support comes from on this, that it's really isolated, on there.
So the gray part between the parcel and the resident is the flood control?
Yes, yes. And if I can show you maybe I have a street view that shows that later on. So this is on the corner looking towards the site, at the corner of Kendall and Mountain. This is looking down Kendall. We have the property on the right-hand side, and you have the multifamily that's across the street. This is looking on Kendall, looking in the opposite direction. You got the site there on the lower left-hand corner, and then the rest of Kendall. This is the site plan as proposed. Wanted to point out a couple of things. There was a traffic report that was prepared for this. It went through the city's traffic engineer. They reviewed it. There were no particular mitigation measures that were proposed or recommended for this. A couple of things that they are doing is we have those two driveways that are on Kendall Drive. Those are restricted to left-hand turn only, or excuse me, right-hand turn only. I'm looking at it upside down. Right-hand turn only, and likewise the Mountain Drive exit, that's a right-hand turn only as well. There's no signal there with those restricted turning movements. This is a rendering of the corner again. These are some elevations of the canopy and the service islands, or the fueling islands, I should say. We have the floor plan and the elevation of the convenience store. The floor plan and elevation of the express car wash. And with that, our recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution forwarding to the Mayor and City Council defining the categorical exemptions, and that they approve the application as submitted. I'd be glad to answer any questions. The project architect is here to answer any questions of that. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Oliver. I hereby open public hearing item number 7. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Joseph?
Joseph is the applicant.
Oh, perfect. Hello. If you could state your full name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Joseph Karaki. I'm the architect, applicant of this project in here. My address 4887 East La Palma Avenue, Anaheim, California, 92807.
Thank you. Any comments you wanted to add to the report?
Just I have two comments or two requests, if I may. We wanted to add a propane tank between the two buildings, between the car wash and the convenience store. And the second request was to see if we can do phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 2 will be the car wash, and then phase 1 will be the gas station. So this way to allow us to open for business, my client to open for business and run it a little bit, and then come back and build the car wash.
If I may, on the propane tank, I mean, that would be something that would be done through an administrative permit. He can do that. As it relates to the phasing, a lot of projects are done over time, if you will. So what I would suggest is that we make clear or add to the conditions of approval, indicating that all of the off-site and on-site improvements be constructed prior to the certificate of occupancy for the first building, if it would be the gas station and C-store, and that they rough grade the pad for the car wash, if that's to come later on. What we don't want, if I may use an example, if you're familiar with the service station that's on Inland Center, right next to the 215 freeway, there's an ARCO and there's a vacant lot that's next to it has some native vegetation there, I'll call it. That's all part of one project, and so that's an example of not requiring a project to be. I didn't say Irvine Center Drive, I said Inland Center Drive. That's an example of a project that didn't include those requirements. So for this one, I would request that we add that condition that all on and outside improvements be completed, landscaping, which would be the landscaping and pavement, and that the rough pad for the car wash be included if the commission was inclined to support that.
I'm in full support of having that. I live very close to that, so I do see that on a regular basis. If the
I'm good with it.
Okay,
yeah, we're
perfect.
Good.
So if we can have that all reflect, so it will be maintained and taken care of. Do we have any other comments?
I just have one more clarification from planning. The Type 21, if I'm not mistaken, correct, is part of this. Beer and wine off sale.
The applicant requested thank you for pointing that out. The applicant did request a Type 21 on this application, which is the full alcohol. Our recommendation is for the Type 20.
Type 20, I'm sorry, forgive me.
Beer and wine. So it does include, the application does include a Type 20 license off-sale beer and wine for the convenience store. And there was no over-concentration, and there was no opposition from the police department. That's correct.
Okay. I did actually have a comment on that. On our paperwork and everything, we did have an inter-office memorandum by Lieutenant Gary sent in stating that he neither approved nor denied the application request in terms of about this licensing. If you could elaborate a little bit.
Yes, if I may. I believe maybe since the beginning of the year, there was a meeting with our department and the police department as it related to their review of our ABC request. The police department felt more comfortable doing the analysis and the research in terms of crime statistics, concentration, those kinds of things, and they felt that and it was agreed that the land use, if you will, which is the sale of alcohol, is really something that should be more as the discretionary action, and leave that up to the planning commission. So they're at this point they're not inclined to make a recommendation of support or denial unless, like we had two previous cases where they were really over concentrated in crime and some of the other factors, where they crime reporting and such. But in this particular case, their position has really been to kind of stay neutral and leave it up to the decision makers to vote on that.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
And so it'll be going from a 21, which was asked for, to a 20, just
It'll be a 20.
off sale on beer and wine. Perfect, all right. Any other comments on this item? If not, I will hereby close public hearing. And thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, just as a reminder, we're going to need an affirmative 5 votes on this because it's amending the General Plan and Development Code.
Thank you. I will actually entertain a motion for this item. Do we have a motion for item number 7?
I'll motion item number 7.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor of this project?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The project passes unanimously. Thank you.
Congratulations, and don't forget to come by the Chamber of Commerce and become a member. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on to item number 8. If we could have the staff report, please.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Item number 8 tonight, we've seen for the last couple meetings here. It is Development Code Amendment 19-02. It's pertaining to accessory dwelling units. I will go just through briefly what we've discussed before for the benefit of our new commissioner. I do want to make sure we all are clear on what this amendment is proposing. As we've discussed, a couple years ago there was some recent state legislation give us new standards for accessory dwelling units, defining some limitations on what the cities can enforce, certain areas where we can and add in our own regulations. Since that came into place, we don't actually have a city ordinance regarding accessory dwelling units. We're operating under the state standards. Primary changes, as we've gone through, there are now ministerial actions. There are new limits on square footage. There are limits on how much we can enforce setbacks on the units themselves. There are reductions on parking and exceptions to the parking that we can require. And then we do have a few changes, which are specific points of clarification that the city is proposing to fill in some of the gaps that the state left us. That's looking at limiting some of the size of some of the units in where we can. We did talk about the height of detached units. Previously, we were looking at allowing it to be consistent with the home. That's something based off our discussion last month that we're now looking at just one story or 16 feet in height. And we're also looking at requiring owner occupancy, and that would be through a covenant that would be put on the property. Same thing with some of the setbacks. We are trying to clarify where they left some space for us just to require on detached 5 feet. That's for compliance with the building and fire code requirements. clarify the revisions that we did based off the meeting last month. It was really 4 primary things that we cleaned up. The 2 that were based off the discussions we had, as I mentioned, was the 1-story or 16 feet for detached units. So no attached units could still be taller if the house is taller because they're part of the primary structure, but the detached would be limited. And then based off discussion that we had with some of the members of the public that came and the commission, there was concern about irregular lots where there may not be room to locate any usable structure completely behind the house, just because lots may be narrow, maybe too wide, or shallow or too wide. So we have changed one of the conditions, or not one of the conditions, I apologize, one of the standard requirements that we're proposing. This would now be that the accessory dwelling unit just has to be located behind the front plane of the primary unit. So it would never be able to project further than the primary house would be. 2 other points of clarification that staff added as we were going through the items. One was in the definition for the units. There was a couple places where it referred to primary unit and then just talked about the residential structure. We just changed that so it says primary dwelling unit consistently so that we knew that everyone reading it knew we're talking either accessory or primary. And then the other one was anywhere where we had reference to minimum or maximum square footages, we added a point of clarification to note that that is referring to the living area of the unit. For example, if somebody wanted to propose a garage or something with the accessory structure, that would not be counted against their maximum square footage, just as we don't count that towards the square footage of the main house. We wanted consistency between how we looked at the sizes of the 2 units. Other than that, no other changes were made between last month's meeting and this month. So with that, our recommendation, as before, is to adopt Resolution 2019-030. That would be forwarding a recommendation to the Mayor and Council for the statutory exemption on the project and approving the amendment. With that, I will say we did receive some comments. I do have copies from one of our residents that were expressing some points about the amendment. I do have copies of that. Since we do have the resident here, I can ask, would we like to distribute this email, or we can also have you speak? Okay. I mean, I can provide these copies, or we can allow the time and then add to it. Sure thing.
Thank you. I will actually open public hearing item for this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this? About the amendments and the changes we've made? I do see we have a speaker slip for Hank Mitchell. If you could state your full name and address for the record.
I'm Hank Mitchell, 3766 Belmont Avenue, Vermont, and thank you for indulging in my paperwork here. Beside that, a couple things in my mind came up that putting it an extra roof offset on a triangular lot, you're just adding more roofs out there, and you're just going to take away from the aesthetics. GFR and some of those build some really nice tracks, but if you're going to start putting the main house, a garage, and then a third roof, and it's all going to be visible, you're going to see a conglomeration of roofs. I think you should stick with the state, get it behind the building, and if it doesn't fit on a particular lot, it's a moot subject. It just doesn't fit. Go get a different lot. Because if you start coming up with all these variances, and please be very careful with variances, they'll get you in trouble. DRC is in trouble now, and we've had a couple problems up there in Vermont because planning department said, well, it doesn't say you can't, so I guess you can. When you come up with a variance, be specific. Don't make it kind of general, because when it gets down to planning department, things get kind of lost in the shuffle. But one of the considerations is sewer. I don't know how you'll hook up a second building to the sewer. Up in our area, every land and home west of Myers is on septic. And Valerie Ross, our senior planning commissioner or director after the 03 fire, came up with an ordinance that you can only have one septic tank per parcel and one structure per septic tank. So you really can't put any ADUs up there unless you come up with a variance. And that means you'd have to come up with a second septic tank on that property. And that's not what planning is really planning for that area. They want to put sewer in. So there's a variance that will come before you, and somebody's going to ask to put an ADU up there, and they're going to have a second septic tank. And by ordinance, we're living by that ordinance, but somebody else might come along and politically correct, so yeah, we'll do you a favor. We'll let you put another building on there and tie it into your original septic, or you have to put a second septic. And that's one of the things that the city's been working towards eventually, is bringing sewer up there. The other thing is the parking. Cul-de-sac, you add a parking space per ADU. There is no extra parking space in a cul-de-sac. And we have some problems, just Belmont Avenue alone. It's not quite 53 feet wide, I don't think, but it's a parking lot. And you add an ADU behind, I don't know where they're going to put the other cars, because up there we have a family of 4. They might have 4 cars, a Jeep, a motorhome, a trailer, toys in the back. They can't park in the back. And then you add an ADU with an extra car, they're going to be parking down the street in front of these neighbors' house. They haven't got a place to park. That's a variance. You guys are going to have to think about that. Okay, I'm done. But hey, one last thing. Thank you all for contributing your time up here, because I couldn't do it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. All right. Yes?
If I may, I just want to add a couple points of clarification, because I know there were a number of questions about some of these issues previously. As far as the setback requirements for any of the existing structures, my reading of the state's legislation, my discussion with our legal counsel on these proposed standards, everything that we're proposing is compliant with the state's requirements and their existing legislation, and there is no specific requirement on the placement of the home. The city is allowed the authority to establish setback requirements for the attached and detached structures. And just to clarify, because I believe it was brought up at the last meeting, this is simply the overwhelming majority of these standards we're already having to comply with. They are part of state law. We are not proposing to allow the units because they're allowed, period. There is nothing that we can do as staff, as long as we're looking to comply with the state, which we are, where we could ever prohibit them. So this is simply a matter of trying to clarify certain points that the state did not provide clear direction on, just so that we do have clear direction when a project comes in. But as long as a project does comply with these requirements, or however they may be amended, it is a guaranteed approved project. There is no discretion on any of these actions from after we adopt these standards.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this agenda item? If not, I will close public hearing. And oh, yes. Go ahead.
You fell asleep there. No. These are very good. Thank you for bringing them to our attention. My question is to the staff, what are we going to do with this? Are we going to respond to this? I don't know what the answer is to some of these, but I think many of them are quite reasonable, even just the one about added residence and now in parking in front of the street. One complaint that I always hear from neighbors is tandem parking on the public street. And I know that nobody owns that, and they can do that, but that is a common complaint that I often hear. So what can we do about these? Are we going to respond to these or look at them individually, or what? What say the staff?
If I may, and I do understand the concerns on here, and I will agree, concerns such as parking are valid. We've all circled the block trying to go to someone's house, trying to find a place to park. So that's understood. But as I mentioned, we don't have the ability to limit it. We don't have the ability to prohibit anything. If we don't adopt the standards or some version of standards, moving forward, the houses are still going to be built, and we will have no regulations for them. There is really no area that we can go require additional parking. They're allowed to remove garages. That's something that the state has mandated. Any resident is allowed to convert their garage as long as they can still provide that equivalent parking on their property. Generally, people have a 2-car driveway in front of their garage, so that always suffices. And there are specific exemptions where we simply cannot require anything additional.
I'm not suggesting that because you have, every time you report, you're telling us we have to do this, we have to pass. And I'm sure that whatever the state requires is what would be considered at least the minimum. But that doesn't prohibit us from considering some of these things that may impact communities or neighborhoods. A simple thing like about sewer, water, electrical configurations, and so forth. I mean, I know at some point when someone's going to build one of those in their backyard, that must come into consideration to give approval. Or, I don't know, there are a lot of things on here that would raise questions to me. And I'm not suggesting that we not approve, because we seem to have to approve. We have had many things in the past come down from the state, whether we liked it or not, you know, where we had to approve. But we still have an obligation to assure that they're done correctly and that the community can live with this, or it's not going to deteriorate the community or overstress them, a lot of density or whatever. We still have an obligation. And all I'm saying is, I wonder if these can be individually addressed at some time, other than saying we have to approve it because the state is telling us. That still doesn't answer my questions or concerns. Thank you.
If I may, I mean, it hasn't really in the past been our policy, if you will, to provide written comments to each item. I mean, I don't know. We can speak later internally from a city standpoint and policy. You know, as you know, people get up to the podium at planning commission, city council meetings all the time. Very few times is a written response provided. But I will say, as it relates to this this proposed ordinance, again, we're really getting into the use again. I mean, the state legislature has determined that we're in a housing crisis, you know, population and such, and they're finding ways to essentially mandate cities to allow for more housing. And so there's a lot of cities that fight this, you know, depending on the socioeconomic status of those communities and what have you. But there are a lot of difficult things, you know, in the state mandate that all cities are compelled to, or legally required to comply with. What we're trying to do here, and I know it's been maybe a broken record the last 3 times that we've been up here, there is already legislation in place. If you want, if anyone wants to come tomorrow morning and pull a permit for an accessory dwelling unit, and they meet the state law, they get to pass go and get their building permit. We can't prohibit that. There are a lot of areas that are difficult and challenging because of our community and kind of how, you know, the lay of the land, if you will. And so what we're trying to do, there are some of the areas whether it's additional setbacks, size, you know, percentage of the accessory dwelling unit compared to the house and those kind of things. I can't really say that as planners we're overly excited about some of these standards that the state is mandated on us. But what else can we do? What we're trying is the best that we can is work with our legal counsel. Where do we have that area that we could, you know, tailor to our needs, kind of a thing? And you're right. I mean, we get some of these new tracts that are approved for 50, 40 homes, and in reality, there's going to be 80 potentially. When they start adding the accessory dwelling units, I can't say that we're overly excited about seeing that happen, but there's nothing we can do. We can't evaluate it from a CEQA standpoint, to consider the additional dwelling units. We just can't. And so what we're trying to do, and I know it's challenging and maybe difficult at times, and hard to swallow, why do we have to allow these things? And there are some areas in the city that community characteristics, and you're right, whether they're septic tanks, utilities, or whatever the case is. So we're again, this deals with the land use. Okay, you can build one of these structures, but now you still have to comply with the building codes and all the other codes in place. So so they may be able to get that other unit in there because they meet setbacks and this, that, or the other, but if they can't provide utilities to it, then they won't be able to build it. So there's still other measures in place. And you're right, that we get a lot, there's several applications that we get, not necessarily ADUs, but there's a lot of these rural parts of town that are, where we have commercial properties that are still on septic and those kind of things, properties or developments that have been around for a long time. They want to expand and still want to use their septic tank, and the county doesn't allow them to do it. And the sewer line's half a mile away. But anyway, as it relates to the ADUs, there are a lot of, I think, other measures. It doesn't mean that just because you can have that 1,200 square foot box on your lot, you still have to comply with other regulations. And so there's somewhere in there's a balancing act, and the main thing is, and hopefully, if you recall some of the earlier conversations when Travis explained what our current requirements are, what the state's requiring, this is kind of trying to get something that we can tailor to San Bernardino, and that's what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Through the chair. Oliver, I appreciate what you just shared with us. And I also I would like to comment, and I really appreciate Mr. Mitchell bringing all these other notes to us to think about. I work in I'm probably have city licenses in about 50 other cities. Every city handles permits differently. There are many cities we deal with that have design review boards. We can't build anything with reference to a sign without it going through a board that approves it. Just because we've talked so much about this, and I read every city dealing with this, I think it would be important for us to look at how some cities are handling it and really how our residents of our community really want to deal with it. I don't like the idea of another committee, another board, or time. I appreciate what staff does to approve permits and look at ordinance and so on. But in a case like this, maybe there should be a last final check before somebody gets a building permit to get an approval from a commission or a committee and listen to some of the residents' concerns around where this is going to be built. Because every home has different parking situations. Every home has different elevations. So it really opens a lot of doors. I don't think you can write up one plan that's going to cover every parcel in the community. So, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I appreciate how other cities handle things, and I can see the reasons they do that. This is quite an issue, and I pride myself. I live in San Bernardino. I believe I have an upscale home, and I know I would want to see what my neighbors are going to build before they build it. I'd like to get a notification within so many 100 feet like we do a variance, and let me look at the plans and voice my opinion. So I know we have to do this state-wise, and I would appreciate if we had maybe a little more input of what other cities are doing. I don't know what the time frames. I think you mentioned a time frame that we have to have something on the books to get this going. But I think it's important that we really evaluate some of these issues here and I know new issues will pop up all along, but I really think this deserves another committee to look at each individual application for this.
If I may, that's essentially what the state law is prohibiting against. So
that's what I was afraid of.
That's really it. So you and/or your neighbor can go and come in tomorrow and pull plans. There's the word discretion does not exist in accessory dwelling units. That's the challenge that we have for that, and so the only real thing that we can do is within our proposal here is the compatibility. You have to be consistent. The accessory dwelling unit has to look like the house, kind of a thing, and in theory the houses have to look similar or compatible, up and down the street, kind of a thing. But really the state is really making it to a point where one way or another we have accessory dwelling units, and that's so all we're trying to do is there isn't necessarily a timeline or that we have to have something in place. There's state law in place, and we can go with that, and that's just kind of where we're at, kind of a thing. And we recognize and sometimes share that frustration. We get applicants come in regularly, and it's just like, what do we do? You know, and or I don't like, how do we say no? On tape, I guess. How do we, and we can't. And sometimes there's, well, they don't have this, they don't have that, but we work, we are compelled to work with them to find a solution, and that's where we're at. I mean, we as much as we'd like to add some other discretionary power, maybe in some cases put that burden on someone else, let someone else be the bad guy and make that decision, but frankly, our hands are tied, most of the time, and it does get challenging at times.
Yeah, if I can just add on that a little bit, that's, to Oliver's point, it's really, as much as we want, we can't look at them independently. The standards do have to be the same every property citywide, even with as diverse a community as we have. But that is why we've tried to craft some standards, like the consistent aesthetics between the primary and the accessory homes, the consistent setbacks, consistent heights, so that where we can, even though we can't look at it independently, we can try to plan ahead of time so that we can create a little bit of a box in how they can be developed. But it has to be that set standard, and they just come in, yes, this complies, okay, it's approved. That's really it. We don't have that ability to make judgment after the fact.
Through the chair, thank you so much, because this has been quite an ongoing issue. I just had a question. Before we give any type of final approval or anything like on this item, has any communication been with fire and police as to how to handle these additional units? Like oversaturation of neighborhoods?
There hasn't been specific communication on that. Again, and it's not a line I want to continue to repeat, but regardless of the concerns of additional units, additional people living in the neighborhoods, they're already permitted. Where every day, and I know Chantal can nod her head in agreement here, every day we're signing off on more than 2-3 of these right now, and as Oliver alluded, sometimes with struggles, because we know there are items in the draft that we can't enforce because they're not in the state's regulations, and this is not adopted. So there are things that are coming through that we can't even enforce specific requirements on. What we have done, though, to address those concerns, that's specifically why we added the section at the end regarding utilities, or not utilities, addressing. Sorry, I misspoke. So that these units can have separate addresses as the properties may propose, so that if there are emergency situations like that, where a structure is. It's not an unassigned back structure behind this house and you can't see it from the street, but somebody called 911. You know that there is a fixed address there, it has been assigned, and you would be able to have those kind of services respond accordingly.
All right. Any other comments, Commissioner?
Well, in support, I get a lot of national periodicals, and this is a trend going across the entire country, which is something that is just a point of interest. And I have to agree with Commissioner Quayle, but I understand where the hands are tied as well.
I'm sorry, I missed the... I agree with Commissioner Quayle on what point was it?
Well, I agree with Commissioner Quayle, but I understand that we can't do anything in that respect.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? If not, I will close public hearing for it and entertain a motion for approving item number 8.
I'd like to say, what are we approving? I mean, I don't have a list, published list at all of what we're approving.
Again, the standards, the draft standards with the specific amendments from last month's discussion were part of the packet that was distributed.
I don't have a copy of it. Was it distributed? How was it distributed?
End of last week, I sent out an email, like I do every month with the agenda, but it also has a link to the packet. That way you can view it, download it, print it, have it for your needs, but it's the information for you to review for the meeting. All the documents that Travis is referencing is in that packet.
Oh. Okay.
So I will entertain a motion to...
Madam Chair, just as a reminder again, because this is a development code amendment, we need an affirmative 5 votes to pass.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Do we have a motion? Okay. Well, I will entertain a motion to approve the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2019-030, forwarding a recommendation to the Mayor and City Council. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second. Okay. We have a motion. We do have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. And thank you again to Oliver and Travis. You guys have been working on this for quite a while, and I think these amendments are actually going to help clean things up a little bit with that and fill in the gaps. Do we have Planning Commission reports or announcements?
I do have one announcement. This coming Saturday is the Blues Brews Badges and Barbecue, and that's going to be at the San Manuel Stadium from starting at 12 p.m. It's a really great event. They've moved from into this larger location, this larger facility. So if you're available, come on down, have some great food, and enjoy some time with our local police departments. That's going to be Saturday, October the 12th at the San Manuel Stadium.
Any other ones?
On September 12th, we had a grand opening over at City Hall of the Neighborhood Services Center. It was very well attended. And we also kicked off the Neighborhood Leadership Academy. And I'm very pleased to say that we have 45 residents of the city who signed up, you know, way more than what we expected. And it is a very good group. You walk into the room and you just feel the energy that all these individuals have. We have our first session on October 2nd. Our next session is this Saturday. The Leadership Academy is a 6-week training course, so to speak, for residents who want to give back to the city, just don't know how to start, sort of to train the next wave of community advocates. And it is in partnership with the City of San Bernardino. We have excellent presenters. Our first presenter for October 2nd was Chief Paulino, who talked about leadership, ethics, and values in leadership. And we also had Lieutenant Brian Harris, who talked about the more practical things, how to run a meeting, how to put an agenda together, conflict resolution, and so forth. These individuals are going through a training where they're going to learn about their city government and how it's set up, how do you access your government. We're hoping to change the culture a little bit and encouraging residents to bring their proposals forward in a very rational solutions and so forth. We're aware that a lot of times people come to a council meeting and it's, a lot of that. But we're thinking positively. They're also going to learn about how to tell their story using local media and so forth, how to prepare a press release and talking points. They're going to hear a presentation by our local historian, Nick Cataldo, is going to talk about the highlights of San Bernardino. These are all individuals who say, we live in San Bernardino, it's a good place, and they want people to know that. They're also going to get a little bit about healthy communities, what helps to make a community thrive. And they're also going to get a session on grant writing, an introduction to it, and so forth. That is just the first part of their training. The second part is they're going to go out and use what they've learned and complete community projects in designated neighborhoods throughout the city. So we're looking forward to a lot of good things. The other thing is not an announcement, but I have a question and I need clarification, and this has to do with the appeals that go before City Council. And I don't know if that would be better addressed with the city attorney and Oliver or whatnot. But I don't know what goes on. I have some confusion about the appeal process. And I understand, what goes here. They have the right to appeal. The City Council can go with our recommendation or not go with our recommendation. My concern is normally I don't attend appeals. I figure we've done our job as best we could, and now it's in the hands of another body. But I did have occasion to attend one that I think some of our commissioners on the dais who were here at the time may recall. We had an organization who had applied to locate 2 housing/rehab for veterans who were suffering from mental illnesses or substance abuse. And one was to be located, they were both to be located on East Street, one south of Baseline and one north of Baseline, close to San Bernardino High School. The commission approved one, which was south of Baseline, because they felt that it was more in a commercial zone, not too close to residential area. The one that was above Baseline, close to the high school, because it was close to the high school, it was close to a residential area, even though we did have some residents who spoke in favor of it, and also because we asked the question of how much could one community, because they were very close, bear the responsibility of those type of housing so close. And so we approved one but not the other one. Of course, they appealed. I went to that session because I had heard certain individuals saying, you're being anti-veteran, and these people need these types of services and so forth. And I did not think that they understood what the commission decided and why they reached that decision. There were several of us here who have served in the military, are veterans ourselves, or have families who are veterans, so that wasn't the issue. When I went to the council meeting, however, what I saw to be the appeal process was that staff gave the same presentation as they do for us here with the recommendation to approve it. I didn't get any indication if the mayor and council received information about why the commission did not approve one versus the other. I don't know if something was submitted to them in writing beforehand. I did not hear staff or any commissioners. We were not there to speak to that issue. But I just felt compelled then that I had to speak, and that's why I was there. And I shared with the council that it wasn't a case of being against veterans when some of us here on the dais were veterans, or we had family members that were veterans. The concern was, and the question was, how much could a neighborhood or a community bear to have more than one of that type of social service being located? And one that was closer to a commercial, that was okay. We even had some comments on the dais here that East Street is, our downtown main street, and we had hoped for other type of development in that. But my real question, my real concern is, I felt the decision was then, one of the council persons said, we think this needs to go back to the Planning Commission, which they sent it back, and they asked us to reconsider some things, and we decided that we needed to hear more from residents and so forth and so forth. And I think the council eventually approved it. I go by there all the time, and the lots are still empty, and I think it's been more than a year or close to a year, so I don't know what's going to happen there. But the issue for me was, sitting there, I felt that the burden should have been on the developer or the applicant to appeal, and yet I felt as if staff was appealing for them. And I felt like that was a conflict of interest because I didn't see anything that was shared with the people on the dais as to why the council did not approve it. I don't know if that's just not done or what. I don't know. I need clarification about what happens in the appeal process.
If I may try to tackle that one. The policy is usually that whatever goes before the city council is whatever action is taken by the whatever the planning commission. As an example, we had a couple of items tonight, and so.
If I may, how is that presented to them? Is it in writing to them, or is it exist? Because I was there, there was no explanation about what the decision was for by the planning.
Well, the recommendation if it's appealed, they looked for the planning commission decision, okay? And so we will our staff reports typically will include information when we prepare a staff report to the city council. It mostly includes information that you heard the first time yourselves. So you will see that a lot of the staff report mirrors what was presented to you. So in other words, they are hearing or they are reading the same thing that was presented to you in terms of the facts and those kinds of things. And then we also include some narrative as to what your action was. On such and such a date, they adopted resolution, whatever. And this was the decision. What I will suggest, if you will, and I think we maybe experienced it a little bit on item number 2 earlier, is I think that I would suggest that if there's a public hearing on an item in the future, and for whatever reason you don't feel that you can support it, okay, regardless of if there's a consensus or whatever, but in your mind you're going to vote. I'm going to say you're going to vote no on it, right? And these are the reasons. I think that it's important to articulate what concerns you have. Many times, like on that item, last month, there was a vote, but there was never really a whole lot of discussion of why. We heard mostly it was the residents that come up and said, we've got this neighborhood business and we're going to run them out of town. All this, we heard all that continue, one person after another. Maybe there was a couple of comments from the dais of, well, is that fair to the small business? What are we doing for small businesses? Okay, but if you don't express what your concern or opposition may be, we don't know what it is. And so even when you looked at the staff report that I prepared for item number 2 for tonight's meeting, the staff report, there's that one little check. In my mind, that's why I thought it was denied, that you couldn't support it. There were 4 votes that in my mind believed that it's going to affect the small business. And that's the only reason. Because that's the only thing that I heard from the dais and from the residents. And so if you're adamant on opposing a project or not supporting a project, I'll say, I think it's articulating what that is. Earlier there was a comment about the findings. Commissioner Quill was saying, well, what are you saying here? I don't agree with this. Well, last month, frankly that's when you speak up. I mean, not to be harsh, but I mean that's so when and if you watch enough of these meetings and what are your suggestions or comments? Are there any questions? It's not out of line to say, well, you know what, I like this project, but I have these issues with it, right? And then we can jot it down. And so maybe that answers part of your question, but in no situation is our intent ever to make a recommendation in opposition to the Planning Commission. That is not our role. We simply want to present the same facts to the council that were presented at the Planning Commission, so that they are considering the same thing.
I understand that because the report that was given at the council, this was an appeal, was exactly the same that we had. What I don't have, and you answered some of my concerns, and I didn't bring up this question about the appeal because of item number 2 today. I gave you the example of that previous item, and as it was, I think because of my speaking at that meeting, and I identified myself as a planning commissioner, there seemed to be a misunderstanding here as to why the decision was made to approve one and not the other, because it seemed that some of them on the dais were a little confused. And then I outlined it. There was none of that. I would be okay with it if staff was bringing up what they report to us and what the recommendation, but there was no reporting as to what the decision was behind, nor did anyone on the dais that I recall ask the staff, well, why didn't the Planning Commission approve it? And that is my concern. I don't know how fair the process is. I don't know if you gave them something in writing beforehand and they had a chance to review, but there was no mention of it, so I didn't know. But because I was able to highlight some of the reasons behind it, then one of the council persons recommended, because there seems to be some misunderstanding, it needs a more thorough review, he requested that it go back, and they all voted, all voted for it, and then we were able to resolve some of the issues with the developer and the residents about the design, the painting, the landscaping, security, and so forth that were not addressed initially.
I believe in that particular item, that's what really stood out in the difference between the 2 applications, as I remember the movie, how it played out.
But Oliver, it only stood out because I was there to raise the question. My real question is, how does the council and the mayor know what this commission has voted? Is it presented to them beforehand, during, and so forth?
No.
All I saw was the staff, and so if I were council, I would have said, yeah, they should have approved this without hearing that other perspective. So that's what I'm asking. You don't have to answer me right at this moment, but I do request clarification about how is that go down. Otherwise, you're going to see me at every council meeting when there's something being appealed.
So,
I'm sorry to take everybody's time in this.
If I may, when you see the agenda posted, when the city council agenda is posted, that's pretty much when it goes out.
Then, if you can't answer, if the department can't answer me, then I will have to ask the mayor and council at a council meeting when there is, what is going on, because we do have certain obligations. This commission has certain obligations, and I think we try to do our best with what the fact findings are, and then maybe even bring more to the table because of our knowledge, expertise, whatever training, and so forth. And that is important to me. And it's just that when I was there, it was very apparent to me, wow, the other side isn't being considered. And that could be unhealthy. Thank you.
I actually agree with Amelia. There was something that was presented to us not too long ago, which we did not approve. There was an oversaturation of, ABC licenses being handed out, and it was appealed. It went to City Council, and the report was given the same. A lot of people referred to the councilman of that area, kind of saying, "What's your thoughts? You're in that area." He, having read the report and everything, had said no, but majority said yes, and it was approved. So our consideration, was taken into account just because that councilman, read his things. But in some cases, they'll just kind of see the report and be like, yeah, it's another business. So I don't know where our opinion is ever kind of voiced. I don't even know if there's a line put in saying, like, we didn't approve, here's maybe 1 or 2 reasons that was brought up.
So let me, if I might just clarify this for the Planning Commission. So anytime an item is appealed to City Council, and it could be an item that is appealed by an applicant, or it could be something that City Council calls up for review by City Council, right? So anytime there's an appeal that goes in front of City Council, they get a complete packet of all the information, just like you would, electronically, that includes a copy of the Planning Commission report, the action minutes, and the decision that the Planning Commission made. They always get a copy of that. Now, I can't speak for the question in regards to why it wasn't presented at the meeting the action the Planning Commission took. Of course, I wasn't here at that time, but every time we forward an item to City Council, they get a full-blown staff report, they get the resolutions, they get the findings and everything else that has been reviewed by the Planning Commission, right? So they do get a complete packet. Why they didn't question it at the meeting, who knows, but all of them get a complete packet of all of the information in front of them. So, and again, unfortunately, Amelia, I wasn't at that meeting. Now, I think it's important for the City Attorney's Office, though, to kind of share with the Commission when something's appealed, it's what's referred to as a de novo hearing, where it's basically it's getting appealed, and then the facts are presented the same way they were to you with the same recommendation. However, I want to assure you, at least as far as I'm overseeing this department, the City Council will get all the documentation associated with that, including the determination by the Planning Commission, right? So the City Council is aware of what action does occur associated with the item, but it's basically represented to the City Council just like it would be to you, but the facts of the Planning Commission action is also included within that also. And any additional facts. So with the de novo concept, they will allow for even additional testimony above and beyond what was taken at the Planning Commission meeting also. So I hope that, and we can provide additional information to the Commission if they want a little more background in regards to how the appeal process works, the process itself, and how it goes through the process. So.
Do you have anything to say, Mr. City Attorney?
That was all accurate. You know, part of any kind of appeal is the due process right, not to be biased. Due process basically means two things: impartial decision maker and an opportunity to be heard. That's why you get a new public hearing, and that's why they're going to get the same facts, they're going to get the same presentation that all of you received. But, you know, if you would like a formal memo listing ABC, these are the municipal code sections, you know, that lay out the process for the appeals, and some color from staff on how they actually work in practice, I'd be happy to put that together for the Commission. You know, but everything that Mike said is accurate.
So just one more quick clarity for you.
Sure.
So we have actually probably 2 appeals coming in front of the City Council. One of those was the 6-unit project where there was a variance, right? And the applicant was dissatisfied. They've appealed that. The second one's going to be the Yum Yum Donuts. So the other component, too, to just help you understand that council is getting all the information, the same information that goes to council is actually posted on the city's website as part of the agenda that goes to City Council. So that's, everything's all there, all the information's there, and it's the exact same information shared with the public.
So for every application that is denied, then there is a resolution. This is the first time I've seen a resolution for the second one. I don't recall for others that were denied, and maybe because it was a 4-4 vote, and you needed for us to vote one way or the other for accepting that resolution. But it seems to me that the burden is a little lopsided, because it's placed on, if I can see if the staff's recommendation was to deny and then the applicant is trying to appeal, they oftentimes speak, because they're hearing the staff saying we recommended it to deny, and the Commission voted for it to be denied. On the other side, it seems like the burden is more on the applicant or the residents that will come to voice their concerns over a project to appeal and make their statement, which is kind of difficult to do when you have all these official staff stating, you know. But I can understand what you're saying, Mr. Huntley. They get the same report. I just wasn't sure what the council or the mayor received in terms of what the decision-making was on this one. Because when I spoke at that meeting, they didn't seem to know. No one made any reference to it, other than they were very patient in listening to where we stood on this and why, because I didn't see anyone explaining that.
Correct. And I guess it's in some regards, I might classify that as how the kind of the institutional operations have been here within the city of San Bernardino and other jurisdictions I work for. Staff does do, and again, this would be considered a de novo hearing. It's going back to City Council as just like it was presented to the Planning Commission, right? So staff's going to provide the same recommendation. The difference I see here versus other cities is, just like you said, and I don't disagree with you, the applicants usually provide a much stronger presentation associated with what they would like to do, meaning they need to get up here and they need to convince the council, or just like tonight.
Or if they resolve
Yeah.
some of the issues or
Correct.
agree to do certain
Correct.
things. I understand
but,
that.
You know, staff here, it appears that we allow, I mean, staff's the one who's making recommendations, which they do in every city, but we need to also allow the applicant to get up and do a presentation also to kind of voice, you know, support and the justification for their project. And I really don't see that here, and maybe there needs to be more of the applicants themselves coming up and trying to convince, you know, the commission or the council that it's going to be a good project, it can be supported, and we can make the findings, and there are conditions that can mitigate or minimize some of the impacts.
Would we be doing something so wrong if the staff, because I would anticipate that the staff would be objective based on the facts of findings, correct?
Yep.
For them to present what it was that the department recommended, and then to just follow up with, this is how the, you know, if the vote was unanimous that they approved it, then there's not much else to say. But if there isn't an approval, they denied it, would we be doing something so wrong to, after they objectively give their report, the facts of finding, and we are also considering the facts of findings and whatever other factors might come in, to just follow up with, the Planning Commission voted this because of this, this, this.
Correct.
And then they both have it. I don't even know if they get to read all those 800 pages every time they go to a council meeting, but would we be doing something so wrong if we considered something like that, Mr. Huntley?
And quite frankly, it's not, it should be part of our presentation understanding. We're going to take a much longer staff report and condensing it down, but we are there to provide the background associated with it. And again, you know, not being here at the time, I'm not going to say someone did or didn't, but as part of what we do, we should be going through presenting the project and just really allowing City Council to understand that either the Commission was in support or not in support, and then the justification for that. I don't think that's unreasonable. So,
you know, I thank you for that. And for me, it is very important because we have often talked about decaying infrastructure, and we need more business, and we need designs that are consistent with the neighborhood and beautify, and actually, you know, and not getting designs that are, you know, not really what we want for our city and our community. And not only that, we're going to be entering that phase of redoing the general plan, which is supposed to be a very important plan for the next 10 or more years as to what we want to see here. And so it just seems to me it should be a little bit more fair, you know, and I would really request that you look at it, and I'll wait down the line, Oliver, for you to report on it, what you guys decided, okay? Thank you.
Any other comments or reports to announce?
I just have a comment. I would like to compliment our Chamber of Commerce and our city and all the staff and all the volunteer people that made a very successful Route 66 event this last weekend. It was really turned out well, and there are a lot of volunteer people out there working hard, so thank you all. Yeah.
Anyone else wishing to make a comment? If not, at this time, I'm actually going to present and welcome Carlos, our new commissioner. If you want to say anything.
I was waiting when it was going to be my turn. No. No, I just want to say thank you. It was interesting tonight to kind of get to see the process and going over everything, and I just want to say I'm happy to be here with you and hearing the public and, you know, our neighbors, because I do live here. I've lived here for a while. My daughters go to school up in Hillside, you know, North San Bernardino, and I just told them I was going to start showing up. You know, it all started probably about 2 years ago when I think one of my daughter's teachers said, have one of your parents sign this piece of paper, and she's all, you'll get extra credit. And I said, what was I sign? She's all, Dad, just sign this paper. And I said, okay, I'll sign it. Well, I read it. I looked at it. It said, join your school site council and join Hillside School Site Council. And you just have to show up once a month, hear, what's going on at the elementary school. And then I said, okay, I'll do it, Carla. We'll sign it and show up. And she got her extra credit, and I stayed the year, then the second year. And then when I got the opportunity now, I said, okay, I'm just going to show up, see how it goes. And that's why I came today. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Welcome. All right. I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn. Or do we have a director's report?
Quickly, I did want to provide you with an update. You recall we had that project on Little League Drive a couple of meetings ago. There was a question regarding the street improvements to the street. I did speak with the Public Works city engineer. He was here earlier, but I did speak with him, and so just kind of wanted to give you a little update of what's going on here. This is Little League Drive. This is looking as you're going northwest, whichever direction that goes from Palm, I'll say. So the Jack in the Box site was over here to the left, where you see the for sale sign. As you can see, that there is existing curb and gutter that's on the left-hand side of the street that exists all the way up to about that telephone pole there on the left-hand side. There is no curb and gutter on the right-hand side. As we go down the street here, we'll follow it along, and right about so that's kind of the stretch of what it looks like now. We had the project, if you recall, the Rancho Palma specific plan, which runs along Little League Drive there, and it has two components to it. It has the residential component to it, where there's two phases there, and the commercial site. This comes out of the traffic report that was prepared for that. It includes the traffic improvements that are going to be done to Little League Drive on there, where there's going to be the right-of-way dedication. There's going to be curb and gutter put along that. This is the first phase in front of what the residential development, and the street will be improved to the center line of Little League Drive. You'll notice the red swirly line that runs along the curve of Little League Drive that goes up to Palm. That is the existing curb and gutter there. That's already exists on that side of the street. The next phase, which involves the commercial development, will complete the curb and gutter on that side of the street and do the street improvements to match along that entire stretch. They haven't indicated yet, the developer. I know that they're starting their street improvement plans, which is going to go first, the commercial or the residential. But over time, that entire stretch is going to be completed. I did speak with the city engineer about what's going to happen with I'll call it the left-hand side, the other side of the street. And what he's indicated is that they're going to start working with us, community development, in terms of which larger projects come in and what street improvements. We have a capital improvements program now that is regularly implemented now. We have that's on an annual basis. We budget funds for that, and so we're going to work together to identify those roadways and street improvements that need to be constructed. This street here will be earmarked for improvements. In terms of the timing, I think it's going to be as we get closer to the Rancho Palma project being completed. Sometimes there's the economics where if both are being done at the same time, with both sides of the street, sometimes there's a reduction of overall cost when you do it all at one time. But it is on their radar now, and so I just kind of wanted to give you an update of those improvements and what was going on there. There was another question a couple of meetings ago regarding the stop signs on Belmont. Alex was going to discuss that a little more this evening, and so maybe we'll save that for next time. But essentially, they did do a study, an analysis, if you will, and the installation of stop signs are based on traffic volume, not incidents, kind of thing. So it's my understanding that there was some discussion about there had been some accidents in that area and whether or not there were more than welcomed, if you will. So they did do a review of what the traffic flow was there, and it didn't breach the threshold for adding those stop signs, and I just kind of wanted to update you, and maybe we can wrangle Alex when he's here at the next meeting and kind of get some more clarification on that, if that's okay. And those are really the two updates that I wanted to provide to you this evening, and I'd be glad to answer any questions if need be. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
One-time code enforcement was going to be involved with this commission. Is there any new update on what code enforcement is doing in the city?
The latest I know is that they are going to return to community. I keep forgetting the economic development part of our department name down, but they'll be joining our department at the beginning of the year, and so we'll work more hand in hand in terms of the the violations and land use to get those resolved. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other comments? If not, I will actually entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.